Avon Cobourne. You asking me who? I said Avon Cobourne, right?
The 5, the 4, the 3. Avon Cobourne is into the end zone.
Avon Cobourne.
Ding dong. Avon.
Is Avon Cobourne.
Avon Cobourne. Coburn.
Handoff goes to Avon. Touchdown. Avon Cobourne.
Hey folks, Phil Davis, Ancestrylands, Ancestrylands.com. We have, oh man, you talk about royalty. We've got gridiron royalty here today, folks. We've got Hall of Fame royalty. You wouldn't be surprised the people I know. You know, you think I talk land ownership, all of this stuff. I bring in people from all disciplines, people you can Google, people you can look up. And this is someone I've known longer than any of my guests, someone who was a rival at times, someone who I looked up to, I strived to be like. He was always a shooting star. See who I know, all right? I didn't bring him in. This is a long-time friend. When I say a long-time friend, we went to high school together, all right? This is someone who knows my dad. Like, if you see my dad on videos, if they were walking down the street, this is like, hey, what's going on? That's where it is. Come over the house and eat spaghetti. That's where it is, all right? Like, that's where it is. You know, we ran track together, football together. This is someone that I looked to. I wanted to beat him in football and track. He was always something I strived after. I still got tapes of us running together, running against you. I've only beat him one time, and I think that he was slightly injured. And it was the one time I beat him on a 200-meter dash in an actual race that I beat him. And my family was so happy, and we still did not care that he was slightly injured. Just kick him while he's down, all right, folks? But any which way, stay tuned, folks. We got more coming to you. Mr. Avon Cobourne, how are you today?
Oh, I'm blessed, man. That is hilarious. I love that. Love that.
You remember some of that?
Kick him while he down. I ain't mad at you. I did the same thing, man. I'm blessed, man. Thank you for having me on the show, man. I'm excited, man, because you know, you're a baby brother of mine, man. You the guy that I hated to let you know win at anything. You know how it is when you got a little brother. You're like, oh, you know, beat me at nothing.
Yes.
And you know, that one time you beat me actually twice. I don't know if you remember, but you actually beat me twice. I you know, you never forget that.
No, I got it on tape. If anybody knows my brother Tipsy Jules on Xbox, my brother Julius, my parents came to every event. They filmed everything, you know. So it was the one time my brother was filming. He's like, oh, he beat Avon. It's actually in the actual film, you know. I have it here in the house. It's crazy. Everybody's like, my dad's like, oh, it was the one time my dad was proud of me. And I was like, you know, he's injured, right? You know, like, football wise, my dad's always been proud of me, but he knows how my dad is. He knows what that means. So any which way, let's talk a little bit about again, folks, let me just set this up. Avon and I have high school, and we're still, you see this commonality with other people that I've met. I have people who have been lifetime friends. We still, there's conversations when I did land that he and I talk. We try to find ways to bring value to my clients, to connect and make him a resource, that I send out my clients' information to him. There's contacts that he sends me of people who are interested in land. We try to support each other in our different avenues. You worked hard to get where you were. Your success wasn't just given to you. This is a family man, a man that I've come to look at and respect, because I was watching and knew some of the intimate, personal pain journey that he went through. My family was aware of it, and I knew what he had to do to get out of the mud. And every time this man had adversity where it looked like he wasn't going to succeed, even when he was successful, he still overcame that. And I took that with me for the rest of my life. And that is one of the contributing factors that brought me to become Ancestrylands today. So you want to start and tell them a little bit about yourself, Avon?
Yeah, man. So Phil, man, again, I appreciate you having me on the show, man. And anytime I get a chance to bless somebody with a story, you know, and my wife is saying she's going to write a book called The Book My Husband Should Have Wrote About My Life. So you guys are gonna get a little bit of that, because she's been trying to write this book for a long time. But you know, I started out, you know, as humble as most people, you know. So I'm from Camden, New Jersey, and if your listeners don't know, you know, Google New Jersey, and then find Camden on there. It's 9 square miles of, we used to call it 9 square miles of death. But I was blessed enough to make my way out of there, being though I was a good football. I was actually a great football player. At a young age, I did some things that people were able to see something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Right.
Not just athletic wise, but the way I thought, the way I carried myself. And I say that to say, I started out in Camden, New Jersey, and then in high school, my family was actually living in the shelter. I don't even know if you know that, but my family was living in the shelter in high school. And I played football. I was at a different high school before I met Phil. I was at a different high school, and we was living in the shelter, going back and forth, riding the city bus. And we were using the address that we no longer lived at, just so we can get, put ourselves in a better education. So I was in Camden, catching a bus from Camden to Cherry Hill, which is a middle class white suburb. It's probably upper middle class, I would say. It's probably more middle class now because a lot more people, from the bad areas have moved in, and so they came up in life. So it brought down some of the population, but it was more of just a white suburb and there was a handful of people that looked like me and you in this area. And so I was going back and forth and playing football as a freshman. Coaches saw something in me, man. They said, we want to bring you up to varsity. And I was playing freshman football like everybody else, but the crazy thing was, man, the guys that I would walk past them getting ready to play or get ready to practice, and I told them, I said, look, I'm gonna take your job. And I just knew I was better than half of those people, but I was a freshman and they'd been in there before, and I knew it because I grew up in that. I would go back from Camden to Cherry Hill, and then so I knew those guys that was a year ahead of me. Right. And I'm like, I know I'm better than all of y'all. Right. And so with that said, I got moved up from freshman to varsity, probably about 3 games into the season. And then around that time, the school got wind that I was not living at that address. Wow. So then one of my Pop Warner coaches, he kind of found out, and his son was on the team just like me. And I asked him, I said, his name was Ed Mebbs. Ed and Miss Diane Mebbs, God rest her soul. Miss Diane passed away in 2019. Oh, wow. God rest her soul. She was really the deciding factor. And any man that has a wife knows you have to run everything that happens behind, by your bride to make sure it's okay. And me coming from, so prior to me coming, a lot of people don't know this, is that prior to me moving into their house, so on the weekends, when I wasn't playing, like I didn't go to the games on the weekends because we played on Fridays during the day. Right. And so the weekend before I moved in with the Mebbses, I was actually stealing cars, which was crazy. Like I was actually they didn't know that, obviously. Right. But I was stealing cars, running from the cops and just doing stupid stuff. And they didn't know that, but they knew I was a good kid from, when they're around me. When they were around me, they just saw something in me, like, Avon, you're a good kid. So I asked them, I said, can I use your address? Right. And they were like, let me, Coach Mebbs was like, let me talk to my wife.
Wait a minute. No.
And she was, he was like, yeah, you know what, Avon, we want you to move in. I was like, and mind you, listeners, that this is a white family, and they have 2 daughters. 2 daughters, and I am probably 14 years old, 15 years old, right? And 2
muscular,
sons,
trapezius,
with trapezius,
triceps, biceps, abs, and hungry.
But what I'm saying is,
I know I'm getting it. They know I'm getting it.
They trusted me enough to be around their daughters. You know what I mean? Right. And for me, I got a daughter, and it will take an act of God for me to move another man around my daughter. Right. I don't even like her going to other people's houses because I just don't. But at the same time, I know when that time comes, I got to do what's right, regardless of what's happening, because I know the possibilities of how a person's life can change. So so from that point, they let me move in, and then from there I played a couple games and I got hurt a couple times. And then their son transferred to Holy Cross, and he told me, he was like, you know what, man, you should come. And Holy cross is kind of where me and Phil kind of connect.
Right. Let me ask you a question real quick. So let's go back a little bit. And again, Ancestry Lands has no knowledge. I'm sure the statute of limitations of it clears you of any wrongdoing orders. So we're just gonna say that was a young man. He was a minor at the time. No, but I wanted to ask is that, you know, during that time, and folks, I want to just make sure you all understand, this is a young man's hardship that it wasn't like he chose this. It wasn't like, you know, we look at people in our society and we want to call them the lower dregs or, you know, the criminals. And again, he living in a shelter, you know, can we just talk a little bit about your mindset? Because a lot of people are great into this, great mindset and get into there. But again, you started at a mindset of, it looks like survival. You know, when I met you, that was not my world, but you ended up being in the same world and you went on to achieve. But, you know, let's just kind of not jump past that real quick, because I want people to understand that you were faced with the same, worse than what other kids are going through in those different environments, and what kept you at least being able to present yourself in a nice way when you were around other people instead of looking at them as these are people I can victimize.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say it's because, and this is, so I used to work for the YMCA. Mm-hmm. And so this is so if you never grew up and you grew up in the YMCA, and if you did grow up in the YMCA, I'm sorry, you have a why story on why the YMCA changed your life, or how the YMCA changed your life. We call it the why story. So me leaving, and the reason I was able to kind of, you know, adjust and adapt and to kind of, you know, fluently put myself in situations to be presentable, right, was because first I always wanted more. You know, that was the first thing. I mean, you gotta want more to do more. And in my mind, you know, I knew Camden wasn't the end all be all for me. And there's some people around me that, you know, I remember sitting on the stoop one day and somebody said, you know what, you guys are gonna be drug dealers. And I'm like, wow. No. I mean, I grew up in an abusive household where I knew that wasn't gonna be an option for me, because I wanted to be a police officer. Because, like, at the end of the day, I want to be a cop, because I'm gonna lock people up that abuse. You know what I mean? Right. So I knew I wasn't gonna be a drug dealer, because that wasn't in my mindset. So I knew I wanted more. So
were you taking names of people you were eventually gonna lock up once you became a cop? Like, I'm gonna get you later. You wait.
Oh no, 100%. I mean, the number one person was my father. Like, he was the one that was gonna get arrest him. I was going to beat him up. I was going to do everything I could to make his life a living hell because of what he did to my mother. You know what I mean? So for me, I knew that wasn't where I wanted to be, Phil. That wasn't the mindset that I had, you know, growing up. I'm like, Camden is not the end all be all for me. So I said, I'm able to kind of become presentable, because I was, and again, I grew up, there was only white people that I saw was white people that were coming to buy drugs or lock police officers, right, you know, harassing. And I mean, they're just doing their job. I mean, because right, they expect us to do bad things, even when you're not. So, right, you know, when you expect something, you're going to get everything that you expect every time. So, you know, we ended up doing dumb stuff. And, but along those lines, I was able to so I started going to Cherry Hill when I was in the third grade. So when I was in the third grade, I was able to see a different environment, which wasn't the normal for people that grew up in the hood where I'm from. Like, you just don't see, like, you know, when you see white people, you see, okay, it's a threat. You know what I mean? Right. They're a threat. They either we gonna get them or they gonna get us, type of thing. So I went there, and it changed my whole mindset on you know, white people, because I'm like, wow, like, they're nice. They, you know, they talk to you, like they speak to you. Right. But that's just not what you think. So the way I was able to present myself in a productive way is because I saw something early enough to really change the way I see things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So let me ask this again too as well. So two things you connected on was that you were young enough to have your environment change to give you a different stimulus, that you were able to see something outside of your natural environment. And we've covered that in different episodes about how education and environment can lead to a change within a person from what their natural environment is. So if you improve those two things, you can generate a different outcome. And I think you're a classic example of that. The second one was, what did you notice about the difference in values? And again, this is not a episode to glorify, people of non-color as opposed to people of color. We're just talking about his journey, his story, what he noticed, what's available to other people who are looking at this and saying, I can follow and do something similar to as well. What were the difference in core values that you saw, maybe from your neighborhood to what you were starting to get exposed to?
You know what? To be honest with you, I can't really say if there was a difference in, it was so I don't know if I'm answering your question right, but
well, just the difference in environment, like the things you saw that they were important to them. You know what I mean? That started getting you to kind of move to that direction.
I don't know if it was them that was. I don't know if it was them that I saw. It was how I was living, you know what I mean?
Got it. Oh, wow.
I wasn't eating Snickers for dinner. You know what I mean? I actually had food. You know what I mean? When you're not in survival mode, you can actually, worry about other things. Like, I mean, just with any, like in any mindset, if you're in survival mode, if you're living under a bridge, you only trying to find, what to eat, or warmth. You know what I mean? It wasn't. So I had the warmth, and I just didn't have the food as a kid. And then, what changed for me was I was able to see different things. And I think that's you talked about it earlier. Yeah. When you're in survival mode, you only think about what's next. You can't think about like in business, you can't work on the business. I mean, you can't work on the business because you're always working in the business.
Right.
So when you're working in the business, or when I'm in survival mode, that's just working. And you're a business owner, that means you're just working, in the business all the time. And you can't see past that because you need some help. And I actually had somebody to, pull me out of that and allow me to see, because it wasn't so much of everybody else. It was like, well, okay, I ain't got to worry about this. Now I can focus on other things. I mean, I mean, obviously I was a heathen at some point in my life. I mean, I was. I mean, I think we all were, but it's just who gets caught and who doesn't.
Right.
And because I mean, there was only one perfect person that I know, that I believe in. And we've all done something that we didn't get caught at, which if we would have got caught, would have changed the way our lives are right now. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? So to answer your question, it wasn't really everybody else's environment. It was really the environment that I was put in that allowed me to think outside of, okay, am I going to have something to eat? You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's kind of, I think that was the biggest thing for me, was that I was like, man, I can get 3 meals a day. Wow. Like that was huge for me.
Could I ask too as well, was there any difficulties for you adjusting to transitioning to a predominantly Black culture, African-American community culture, where now you're almost, like in a foreign environment? Now you're around predominantly Caucasians. There's different mannerism, traditions, that shock value. How, and I think something with our community, the African-American community, we look to see so much of the differences that we never find what's relatable. And we always envision worse. And then we have a story like yours where, they're good and bad on both sides, but there are people who really care about people past their color.
Absolutely.
And that, but for you, for us in the community, if we don't, I don't want to say integrate, but expose and try to get some kind of cross-pollination, understanding the cultures, the differences there are and the similarities, that shock value that you initially experienced, how did that transition into where you felt comfortable?
You know what? It was easier than I thought it would be, because one, I was looking for something different.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? I wasn't looking to, what I'm used to was, fighting every day. Like,
wow.
I can use these. I mean, I probably should have became a boxer because I was really nice with. I'm being honest with you, I was nice with my hands. Like, I had to use them. I mean,
right.
But I promise you, like, I was nice. Like, in the hood, I was the next. Like,
right.
I was 13 beating up 16-year-olds, and these wasn't like little kids. I'm like, these are like halfway grown men, 16, 17 years old. And from there, so the natural progression of, I'm gonna give you a little history lesson on the hood if you don't know. So
hood hats are on, folks. Get your hood hats on.
Yeah, put your hood, get a pencil and paper. I'm gonna show you the progression of what happens to a kid in the hood. So when you start out, you're in your little group, but then somebody is the fighter. Somebody is the one that they say, okay, you go ahead and do that. The bold one. The bold one is the one that is halfway crazy one. So me growing up, I think that's why I was such a good football player at an early age, because I was just so physical. And I think that separates people in the game. So with me, I was the guy that was going, okay, we're gonna go get this guy. Okay, I'm gonna do that. So I was the bold, crazy one that's like, okay, let's my eyes getting big, like, let's go do it. You know what I mean? So with that, so once you get there, now everybody wants to try you to see if they can be the guy. So then, my whole crew knew what time it was. And then, we go to another crew, and now they like, okay, all right, let's make it happen. So then I beat them up. So then what naturally progresses is, okay, now as you get older, you stop using these and you start pulling that trigger. And I was just blessed to know, because I mean, again, at the end of the day, you can beat so many people up so many times, but then there's gonna be a time and place where you got to do something different. You got to do something more to really prove yourself. And I was just so blessed. And so this is the history lesson. You go from beating people up to proving a point, to shooting people and killing people to proving a point. And before I got to that point, I found a outlet to the anger that I had. I was able to hone it or direct it in a place where you don't get in trouble. You can hit people as hard as you want. It's like, sign me up. So with that is the progression that a lot of people don't know. Like, me growing up, I was the next guy to be the big kingpin drug dealer, because one, I wasn't scared of nothing. Like, I mean, the way I was living, it was like, okay, what's next? Like, I mean, blessed to not have to ever go to jail, and I had friends that and went to the big person jail, but I knew I had got in trouble once. Well, I got in trouble twice, but the one time I did get caught.
Maybe 3 times too. Who knows, right? Go ahead.
No, it was only twice. It was only twice. But the one time I did get caught, it really changed my life. So we had like a toy gun, and these kids was pulling money out of a machine, out of a phone booth. So we knew the phone booth where we lived at. If people used it, you can bang on it, break it, and the money come out. So the kids was getting money out, before we can get there. So I mean, it was a toy gun, but the kids stupidly, I mean, it's always, the person that so they knew my mom, they knew me, they knew my mom, and we were sticking them up. Give me the money. And we went and bought some, because again, that was how we ate. 25 cents was a lot of money. You could get a whole bag of chips. You know what I mean? A whole bag of chips. So yeah, man. So
could I just say, for our listeners who don't know what a telephone booth is, because we do have some younger audiences here, once upon a time in your regular street, you could walk down and there was an actual telephone booth, a large actual phone where you can dial, not a cell phone. You put in a quarter and you can call pretty much most of the places within your local area. So just so you know, a little history lesson from one generation to the next. Please continue.
Yeah. I forgot there was some young people.
We have an audience as young as our main audience, or second top tier audience, is like 18 to 23.
Absolutely. That's
so
crazy.
They're not going to know what
phone booth is. Like,
we might as well be the old sage on the mountain now, Master Oogway,
Yeah, man. So I got in trouble, and the cops came and found us, and they said that we stuck the kids up, and we had a gun. And I got probation for like 18 months.
Wow.
So, which was, it was probably the So from I got 18 months of probation, and then I had to go to the prison, which was in Camden by the river, and you had to go to this thing called Scared Straight, and it's on TV now.
Yeah.
It's on TV now. So they didn't really put us in that they walked us around, but it wasn't it wasn't all that. Like, I mean, I know I wasn't being tough because those dudes was bigger than me, and so they sat me down and they all had a conversation, and it was one guy just sitting there, and he didn't really speak. He didn't speak until getting to the end. But when he started talking, you recognize that he had no fronts. Like, all his fronts was gone, top and bottom. So he had like fangs. All you see was the fangs, and he's like, I know why you guys thinking, why is my teeth knocked out? And he wasn't that old. He's probably in the 50s. And I say that's not old, but at that time I thought he was old. I thought he was older. Right. But he was in his 50s, and I'm like, and he's like, I know you guys are wondering, why my teeth all fell out. He said that's what happens when you got a cellmate that attempts to kill you. Wow. And he knocks all your teeth out. So when you ask him, or when he makes you give him fellatio, you can't bite him. Woo! I said, from that point on, I said, there's no, and he ain't say fellatio. I'm just using fellatio. Right. For your,
Yeah. We will not be providing a screen definition up here. You can look that up.
Yeah, look that up. So when he said that, I was like, I don't want no parts of no trouble. Like that, right? I'm shaking now just thinking about it, because I was so scared. Like, I don't want to do nothing to no man. Like, I am all the way. I'm L7. Like, square me up. I'm done. For real. Like, I'm dead serious. Yeah. So I moved out to Cherry Hill, and it was like almost ending. It was almost ending. So my probation was in Camden, New Jersey. Right. So I don't know if you're familiar, or if your people are familiar with like Route 70 in Cherry Hill, like right by, it's right past the Cherry Hill Mall, and there's a cemetery right over there. So I had to walk from that point, because if I missed it, I was scared I was going to jail. Wow. I said, it was freezing cold. I walked from Cherry Hill to Camden, New Jersey. Wow. And that's how scared I was of going to prison and being in somewhere where somebody could do something to me. And I was a kid, and I was like, that scared me straight. I didn't get in any trouble after that, Phil. After that, I was a model citizen, and I was I can't say that. I did get in. I just didn't get caught after that. I still did stuff. I just didn't get caught. Let me say that.
Right. Let me ask this. Two things you touched on there was the stimulus of a change, and going back to the other point of when you got to a newer environment, because again, when your environment changes, you're forced to change the Absolutely. Values of the people. When I say the values, I mean that what's important to the people that you stay with, the newer family, such as everyone's going to sit down and have a family dinner. We're going to talk to our children. We're going to talk to you, as you're assumed to be a child. You're part of our family. It's not everyone surviving and we're all lone wolves out here hunting. That stimulus of, you don't need to look over your shoulder. You're allowed to relax and now open your mind to different stimuluses that are going to enhance your growth as a person. You get into that environment, and then you transition going to Holy Cross. If anyone doesn't know Holy Cross High School, which is now Holy Cross Academy in Delran, New Jersey, that's in South Jersey, where we both were from. That is a parochial or private school where you have standard uniforms, which we both did not come from standard uniforms. It was pretty much 10 boots and
whatever you wanted.
Coochie sweaters. I don't even know Coochies were red then, but any which way, it was pretty much you style as you want to, you dress as you want to, and there was a minimal dress code. But now everyone's in penny loafers, sweater vest, and you couldn't even have a beard or a mustache, yeah. And there's a standardized conformity to everyone's here to learn. Everyone's here to not act a fool. Everyone's here to, it's an endorsement of education first. and then some athletics secondly. In your case, I thought it was, boy, they are definitely athletics. With him, he's blue chip. If there's blue chip, he's a blue chip recruit here. I don't know if they got him, but again, let's get to when you get to Holy Cross, and folks, I'm just going to cut in here and give you, when I met him, it was like meeting a giant of an athlete. I had never played football before, and to see a black running back with the physique he had. I was this little scrawny kid. I didn't have a muscle on me yet. It was just, I was pretty much a already eat pork chop.
What are you talking about? I was like, man, this cat ain't got no fat on his body. What are you talking about?
But I didn't have any muscles that much either until one summer. But I was pretty much a pork chop eaten already. So just little meat on there. But watching him, and then in track too as well, I saw his work ethic, and I think that's something outside of the educational side that you got to have in order to be land business. What I'm doing now, where he's at now, he had those qualities. So, you're doing great in football. You're having a stellar high school career, your sophomore, junior year, because I'm a year behind him. And then during what is your senior year, I believe this is where we're talking about he's who's who of it seemed like sophomore, junior year, it was like you're on track to go to any school you want. The world is opened up now. He's got, every time we go to a place, he's who you got to look out for. Everyone's on their defense is focusing on him as a threat. And then you suffer an injury. You want to get into that. And I believe it was against West Deptford that you got. Huh?
It was Deptford.
Yeah, this is what we're talking about. I didn't have to look this up. This is just from memory. And I remember you had a knee MCL or ACL.
It was ACL.
Yep. ACL.
Yes, man. It's so you're bringing back some memories for me, man. Because like you said, I was, and this was before I never really was into football to like watch it and all that. I just knew I loved to play the game because I knew I could hit people and not get in trouble.
Right.
But I'm serious, man. Like it just allowed me to just go out and just express myself physically to people.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that summer before, I had went down to the Tennessee Volunteers, SEC. Went out there. They offered me a scholarship to come out there and play. Notre Dame called me, offered me a scholarship to come out and play. And I mean, I was getting offers from all over the country.
Right.
In camp. And I never really had a huge, and I mean, I never had an injury. Well, I guess I did. I sprained my ankles a lot of times, like as a freshman. As a freshman, when I played varsity, I sprained my ankles a lot of times. But, what he's talking about was, again, I was on top of the world. And again, I think, when I was a freshman, I was on top of the world. I was the man, a freshman playing varsity football, not really understanding, what it was. Right. And even going to my senior years, I remember people telling me like, bro, you're the starting running back. Like,
right.
Why don't you have all the girls? I'm like, bro, that ain't my focus. Like, right. I want to go to school. Like, my goal was to get to college. Like, that was it. Like, right. So for me, the mindset was truly, get to college so you can get to the league, so you can make a better life for your family. And
we're talking about the NFL, folks, the National Football League in America. But again, what I want to focus in on is that you're hearing the same thing that's required for any success. The drive that, we talked about in a video with Donique about the measure of discipline. He had the drive, the commitment, and the agility to make sure he was maneuvering around different obstacles, whether they were girls or anything that could distract him away from his goal. You have to be focused on the goal. And then again, even in that point of building a business, going on your journey, getting a college degree, you still hit obstacles along the way. You're a freshman starting on varsity. Any position, a freshman starting on varsity is an awesome thing. You're on top of the world. You go into next year, you have all the advantage, and now all of a sudden, again, later in the game, success can turn into adversity, and that's what ended up happening, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And then you have an injury, and then how does that? Okay, injury happens. Now your mindset shifts to where tell us about that part now.
It was dark, man. I mean, it wasn't dark to the point where, I thought it hurt myself or anything like that, but it was to the point where, all my dreams and goals are gone.
Right.
Like I can't, I'm not going to be able to do the things I wanted to do.
Right.
And it's, you know, it gets me a little emotional because, you know, I felt like at that time, I'm like, man, I can go anywhere I want. And which was the goal for me. Well, I couldn't go anywhere. I wanted to go to a Florida school, but it was like, no, we got them all. Unless you like number one recruit in the country, you can't come down to us. But other than that, I was able to, you know, I had offers from everywhere, man. And, you know, I tear my ACL. And you know, for me, I thought my life was over. I thought from that point, I'm like, okay, I'm a graduate from high school. Then I'm going back to the hood. You know what I mean? Right. You know, figuring out get it how I live. And you know, just a blessing, man. You know, that Coach Mebbs, who I live with, you know, thank God that he was on top of his game, because we went to several different surgeons that were recommended, and he said nope. And then we ended up going to the Eagle surgeon at the time, Dr. Bartolozzi. I don't know if he's still practicing, but you know, we went to see him, and he's like, this is like a sprained ankle right now. And when he said that to me, I knew I can overcome that because I sprained my ankles. Right. And he's like, this, you know, this injury now is like sprained ankles. You know, people come back from it, you know, all the time. And, you know, when he said that, I had hope again. I was like, man, I might be able to do it. And then I also got, you know, calls from different people that I respected and was like, you know, Avon, you know, you're the best running back I ever seen. If you know, the way you work, you'll be back in no time. Yeah. It was one of those things, man, that it gave me a little bit of life, but at the end of the day, you know, and we weren't supposed to have mustaches I mean, I had mustache, beard. Yeah. I mean, and they didn't say, like, they knew I was in the dumps. Like, yes, they like, I had a mustache that was thicker than anything.
Oh yeah.
And it was I was just down, man. They were like, you know, they understood the situation, and you know, once I got that news from Dr. Bartolozzi that it was just like a sprained ankle, man, I was like, I got hope again. And then you know, and one thing I hate is needles. And you know, I got the surgery, but then there was like a little bleeding that kept up, so they had to go back in and do another surgery. Right. Like, I'm not doing. And so what happened was I wasn't bending my knee like I should have. And anybody that had ACL surgery, they know there's scar tissue that builds up, and it prevents you from, you know, bending your knee, you know, 90 degrees like it's supposed to. And you know, I went into him one time, and he was like, you know, you're not progressing the way we need to. We're gonna have to go back in there and do surgery again. I was like, what I need to do? I'm not doing that again. Like, I'm not doing that again.
Right. So people understand he's a running back. So, you know, that position requires you to make cuts, certain angles, and the bending of a knee, that weight, all that pressure goes up there. And what I wanted to say, man, when that injury happened, I remember my father, it was almost like part of his hopes and dreams. Like, he, Dad, if you're out there, you better comment on this video. And it was like the first time I had to look at my dad, was like, if that happened to me, would I get, you know, it was one of those ones where you just you felt your father care beyond, you know, it was like you were like his son in a way, you know what I mean? And I know you get that part. It's believable. I'm not saying that to fluff. My dad, wow, there's many, we could get all of our high school from many different classes, many different grades, and everyone has a story about my dad, whether great or bad, but that's the kind of person he was. And I remember myself, man, it was like, and like you said, this is the impact he had on the school, was that the entire school was devastated about it. The morale of the school the next day was down on a Monday. You know, that's how much impact he had around the school. It was, everyone was focused on him and what had happened, like shot heard around the world. And what I wanted to ask you was, even though you saw a light at the tunnel, that work, that commitment, that drive, what did it take for you? And the other part too is, I want to make people understand, is that one key detail we're missing in here that we're not focusing on is that there is a person who is mentoring and guiding him along the way. I keep hearing about the Coach Mebbs, you said?
Yep, Coach
Mebbs.
Mebbs.
And there is a person who is, like, we're the older folks now, we're in those same positions. There's a person looking at the young man and saying, I'm going to lead you and instruct you in the ways of where you are today, the man you are today, at those key crucial points, that male leadership, that what we need to be. This is an example you're hearing from another man who passed on that legacy of leadership to him that he's talking to you about now. So don't miss that in this conversation. There are a lot of people out there that are coaches. You need to understand that they're going an extra length for a son that is not theirs, for a child that is not their own, that they took as their own and said, there's an investment in him. And his everything he did was a return on investment, not through him going to the NFL, but it was through his work and effort and his desire to be better. That's the basic requirement for anyone to become successful, is the desire to be better. The first stop. But I wanted to give it back to you and, talk about, let's fast forward. Okay. So you're past the point, you're recovering, and now you get an opportunity, and you obviously sign at a college. And I mean, that's where you leave out of my life from the story there.